thought it best to TIG the wire on. You don't want something too hard and rigid, but I'm sure you could put a lot less chance of fatigue cracking, put it that way, over a MIG. So that's my setup. Considering this is galvanized and that's 90-year-old rust wire, it hasn't come out that badly, and I haven't ticked anything for probably 18 months. So it'd be interesting to see how I go on that panel too. Oh well, find out soon enough. Alright, ready for TIG welding now. So that's what it's come up like. It's got a slightest of gaps there. It would be 3/4 mil, something like that. What's that, about 30 thou? Which is no problem with, as I'm not fusing this, I'm still using filler wire. I'm actually using straightened MIG wire, 0.9. It's important to have your filler wire not thicker than your parent material, or the material that you're welding, because otherwise you have to have a higher heat to melt your filler wire than what your material can take before it melts. It makes no sense at all being, oh, I can get away with this, it helps cool the weld. No. The only reason you got so much heat is because you got too thick a filler wire. Never use a thicker filler wire than the material, because it's going to take more heat to melt the filler wire than it does the material you're trying to weld and not melt away. It's just logical. And I also match the tungsten as close as possible to the material thickness as well. That'll throw a spanner in the works. It gives you much finer heat control, as far as it doesn't spread so far, the heat. The more that is concentrated in a smaller filler wire, and you won't be grinding anywhere near as much. I think I'm on my second tungsten after, what have I done, something like 75 metres of welding just in the Willys body, the other one. So, you know, and I think it was actually more than that. I think it was 2.5 lengths of the swimming pool. Anyway, whatever it is. All right, so, I'm not here to lecture. People can have their own choice. I make my own choices. People are scratching their heads at what I do. You do what you're comfortable with, all right? And what works for you, stick with it. But if you're having problems, maybe try that. So, all right, so that's what we're up to. Just made a start while it's lying horizontally. Just doing the first bit. I always try and weld as much as I can. So there's my tungsten. There's the filler wire. I'll burn that. And it just gives you a nice, neat little weld. So onwards. Not bad. 18 months and haven't ticked, so I'm pretty happy with that. And this is new metal, 93 years old, 92 years old, 93 years old, there you go. Alright, definitely a bit out of practice, but for an amateur that doesn't come up too bad, considering the 90 odd years of difference in metal age. So I'll take the top off and then planish it until it's got exactly the right shape. It's only grown a little bit here, and so it won't take much at all. Alright, so I left the weld bead on the outside first. I cleaned up the penetration on the inside, and there were some low spots. So now that that is flat, nothing protruding, I can hammer what was sorry, some of the weld bead into that low from there. But if I grind this side flat and then go and do the inside, then I have to add material rather than push it through from this side, because if you remember I had a little bit of peak there. So I hammer some of that back into here first, then clean it up as best it will go then, and then I hammer it rest, and now I've just cleaned the outside of the weld up. So now I've been planishing it and got all the shape back out. I've been running my hand back and forth over, feeling for it, looking along the light lines and that sort of stuff. And then well, the pros put a DA over it with 80 grit on that. I've never actually done that. I should try it one day. Apparently it's good for blending and hiding. So but I'd normally just put a strip disc over that. So and I'll look for any highs and lows and keep working it until it's all nice and smooth, and then I can look at doing my first wire edge. We'll see how we go with that. Alright, I've just started to roll my first wire edge. I remember this is from years ago. It was David Granger or something. It was a UK guy who used to post a lot. Unfortunately, he hasn't posted in a very long time. I remember him doing it. The English cars have this a lot as well. So I remember him just clamping to hold the wire so that when you hit it, the wire doesn't move away as you start rolling this over. I'm just using this little hammer at this stage, and obviously I'll have to go to a more pointed one as it pulls around. So far it hasn't moved, so I'll keep trying to slowly move it over as far as I can with that hammer, and then I'll switch to one of my many others. Alright, so hammered over this one to horizontal, and this is just a piece of flat bar that I had actually shaped to fit in that gutter, because this had a lot of dints in it from previous damage, and I was actually using the soft mallet to hammer this over. That seems to be going quite well. It's getting very rounded and it's holding it tight. As you can see, I moved this off to the end to make sure that wire doesn't pop out. So once this is pinned, then I can take this clamp out and then start moving along. But so far, so good. Well, looks like by all accounts it's working. I got it over as far as I could using this before the hammer, well, this got in the way, but hitting right on the edge, because I made this with a curve that basically matched this radius, and hitting in there. So you can see I've moved the clamp back into the original section because I didn't want the wire to try and unfurl that. And so I've been, once it's that far, I then just got some multi-grips, and I was fortunate that it fitted in the channel without any modifications. I thought I might have to slim up the ends or something, and just went along and only got that last section. So this should be well and truly pinned now. I should be able to remove that, finish rolling it over, and then I'll still run back and forth a little bit with this, because the back of this edge will help tighten that. And I did, to get the right amount for this application, I've still got it here somewhere. Anyway, that little offcut that I had, I unrolled it and measured it, how far it was from there to there, and it was 2 1/4 times material thickness. So I'd read 2.5, but this doesn't wrap quite as all the way around as I've seen some others. But I just went off what the manufacturer did. So just times the material by 2 1/4, and then made sure I left that before the final trimming. And that seems to be matching exactly to what's there. This can come off here because you can see it's a good blend. Look at that. Oh, chuffed with that. So, nearly there. Alright, just to make sure that that wire didn't move and not to put strain on the roll either side or where it's still up, I just simply put vice grips either side and then rolled it over in between, just like that. So yeah, there we go. Oh, first time I've seen it too. That's alright. Done my first wire edge. Certainly no expert, but yeah, I'm tough for that I can accomplish that. So full steam ahead. Tidy up, and then I look forward to mounting it temporarily so I know where to build the back door to meet this. So that's why I started on this guard. Alright, so got the guard back on in the position. So this here is the height that the running board will be, and the rear is 32 mil or 1.25 inches, I think that comes out at, higher, just like it is when everything's level on when it was mounted to the Jeep and the wheelies in the first place. So it fits in there really well. Keep in mind that this is now 60 millimeters, or what's that, 2 3/8 or something, higher in the body than it was on the wheelies. And so the whole body will have to be redone to get that height, because if I just mount it lower, then it's going to bottom out. So this is the exact height. As you can see, this is all unaltered through here, that the 300 had, and the plastic inner that went through followed that exact line. I've actually had it in there to make sure that's where it was. It does give a good 75 inches of clearance above the stock tyre, but you can imagine this one though, sitting here, we don't have, you know, a big slope up to it, so it has to be the same. Now, the only thing I don't like, and this I noticed well before I did anything, is, see, this radius just here is tighter. And when I had them face to face with the one that's still mounted on the wheelies, that showed up. I had some bad flat spots here, which is when I showed I pulled these out to fix that radius, but this is actually more radius in that one spot. They're so different left to right that these things, obviously, this is made in the Wheelies factory in Toledo. It's not made by the Holden Body Company. They came with the running boards and front guards, the grille, etc. From Wheelies in the USA. So it was already like that. Now, I don't know, this one did have damage to it, which I've removed all that damage, It's quite possibly, remember this one was stretched right out, and so maybe whatever hit it grabbed this corner and shoved it out that way. It's possible the damages come when that whole guard got stretched out, and that means the main impact site was there. I don't know how to get this radius back out at the moment. I'm not sure. I don't know if to mount it back in the wheelies, although the back of that body is so fragile, and then see if I can pull that down, try and work this over, or will the wire prevent this area from pulling down? Do I do similar to here, but rather than cutting an I shape out of it, I just cut it, pull this down, and then move this to meet it, because I think there's a lot of entrapment in the shape here, which will be hard to move with this included. Not sure. But apart from that, it's looking pretty smick. I'm pretty happy with that. And this is the width that the SRT, the Chrysler 300 donor, was away from the side of this, and those tyres, and that's the same height tyre. It's just sitting 20 millimetres or 3/4 an inch further out than it was. As you can see, I can't actually put it on the face because it hits the caliper there, the Brembo rear caliper. So it's my next task to see. I'll probably make a template of the other one and then compare it to this, and then try some different things to see if I can somehow move this in without spreading that back out again. And that's my biggest fear of just pulling it down. It is slightly, I don't know if I can get far enough back. There's a slight twist to it, but pulling this down would improve that. It would pull this down as well. So maybe it just needs a real big twist in here first. So I might try and somehow lock this part in while twisting that whole back area, and that might bring that in. And I think that's I'll try anything like that first to see how it reacts. And it might be a combination of things that it will need to get there. But I'll first make a template from the other one so I know exactly how different it is. Not that you can see both sides at once, but I remember it coming up, probably the thickness of this, that hooked up more, while the other one went a shallower curve, more consistent curve all the way through there. So it's quite possible that why that guard was stretched out so far was because it got hooked on something. Don't forget, this was a paddock basher for a while. After the guy who owned it passed away, it was just left on a station, and apparently they just used to tear around in it. And so on a big station that was out on the border of my state. So who knows? Who knows? So anyway, that's what we're up to. All right, so I've put it face to face again, and when not sort of fitted in there, and I don't know how much that guard is going to basically pop out once it's released either. But look at the difference in the curve here. There we go. Alright, so how am I going to fix this difference here? That radius is a lot tighter on this one than the one over here. So what I've chosen is a lower anvil that matches the same radius as what I want, rather than this steeper one here. I've never looked at the camera before when I'm filming. You probably won't want it. Anyway, so g'day. I'm Marcus, by the way, for those who are friend and family or know me otherwise. So I'm going to run it through the wheel with the correct radius that matches the profile of the other guard. And I don't know if I can show this, but if I squeeze this in, then the first thing, I don't know if you can see that flexing upwards. This wants to flex up. So by reducing this radius so it comes up higher, it will also reduce the distance from there to there. Now, we'll just have to wait and see if this, there's probably not as much difference there as there is there. So I suspect that this won't shallow out as much as I was hoping. I was hoping this really would be the tightest point with the steepest radius. So by letting that out, it would flatten this inwards. But unfortunately it's not. There's something else going on there. And I'm still not sure how I can correct it. But I think I should at least match the radius first, and then see what it needs to do. Because even from here down, even though I've increased the radius along here, it's still shallower. Even though it's a nice continuous arc now, it's still slightly shallower all the way. So by the time you get out to here, it's about that much out when I lay them face to face. So we'll have to see what happens. In here the radius is correct compared to the other one, and then it needs to be shallower through there. So I just don't know. I'll just have to find out. If this works. This is actually fairly tricky wheeling because you're going around the radius while you're wheeling it. Ideally, you would wheel it the other way. So a quick look at over my shoulder there at the other one to see how far this radius comes around as well. It comes around more this way. We're looking pretty close, right in the middle. Yeah, we're exactly on in through the middle. But here, it's a fraction less. We're nearly there too. It needs to be tighter. If that one is correct, which it might not be. Be careful not to go out there. And you can see, but now flat spotted and pushed this out that way. It's such a shame I can't feed it through this way. I really need the ability to turn this whole wheel this way around. I think this one would probably turn without doing anything. Yep. But I can't turn that. Alright, you remember how different it was before? We can see now, after passing it through the wheel, that is very consistent, actually more consistent than the other one. So what I did, I had to shape one of my dollies. Most of my dollies I had flattened, so it was a single radius because the truck was very flat panels and didn't need a compound curve. So I've had to find a matching curve. So I've literally ground that using first a flap disc and then the loose side of a belt sounder to match the curves. So I've made a compound dolly by tapering it off in this direction because you need not only the curve this way but that way as well. So you can see where it's been striking, it's a lot more on the outer edges while I was stretching that downwards, which also brought this up. Even, I haven't measured it just now, but even just doing that brought the wire edge up, which is basically a fixed radius here, but by bringing it outwards it actually started pulling the sides in. It pulled in 20 mil just doing that, and it'll be even more so because what I've been doing after it came off the wheel, I've been doing it by hand with the flipper in Australia or England, or a slapper in the US. A slapper here is is slang for a whore, so it's probably why we don't have the same name for it. Yeah, so even with all my dollies that I have, and as you can see there's more there, I still had to make one. This is there's stake dollies and that sort of stuff in here, but I still had to make one to suit. So these are where all my spoons and bolsters are kept. That's the die that I made along with this for when I punched louvers. So I'd cut the louver with a chisel carefully right on that edge, and then I'd punch it into that form I made. So, and this has got more flippers in it. These are from, both of the ones I use are from Peter Tomasini, hand built tools. These are such high quality tools, you can just maybe just make out his name there. Same as the other one I just showed. And these ones here, I picked up some of these when I was in England. These are for lead, so I still use those. And these actually came, the KWs actually from Keith Warner, which was my next door neighbour, which I got after he passed, because plumbers use these for lead, shaping lead to the contours of roofing. So you can see I've got a whole selection of different chasers, sometimes what they're called, and that sort of thing. So yeah, coming along real fine. I'll hold it up. I'm still not, if this hasn't changed and it's still too steep, it's really limiting, because basically to lessen this curve it has to shrink here and stretch there. So I've been working this edge right next to it, in trying to stretch it a little bit, and then pulling this way, but it's very hard because you've got a fixed wire in here which wouldn't be stretching necessarily when you're hammering on it. I mean, I have hammered it underneath and then you hammer on top of here, but how much effect that's going to have, just, you know, and then you've still got to hammer in the groove between the wire and the outside here. Yeah, that's a I don't know how I'm going to do it yet. I might still split it, pull this across, then pull this material up to it and weld it back in again, and just hope it doesn't all pull back with when you're trying to make this meet that one. But beautiful and smooth, really pleased with that. I've been working the transition into here as well a bit more, making it flow a little bit better. The stock one is very flat, and I had that first, but it just looked a little odd. So I've gone for a more progressive one. There's still a little bit of work to do there. I can feel a slight rise there and a slight dip there, so that's got to come down, that's got to come up. I might even have to, you know, it's hard. When I look at one angle, it flows better, and another angle, you worry if you've gone too much, and I'd have to shrink that down with a shrinking disc. I'll just keep looking at that and see what it looks like in position too. It can look totally different to what it's sitting here flat, which is not where it's going to end up. Better not. Alright, thought I'd show you the progress. Overall, happy with the way it goes. I'll have a look, butt it up against the other one and see what else needs to be worked. Right. Well, held it up against the other one, and wow, it's made a big difference. I'm really pleased. It's sitting there really well. Look at that. Now, one of the things I didn't notice, and I should have, is that it actually flares out more in the middle and then pulls back in again. So when I was trying to level it by just jacking everything out, so with a laser line it was even, that's not what the stock one is. So even though the back end of this is now in the same position, the curvature of this pulls that middle of that guard out and then it goes back in again. And even the shape has come up really well now too. As you can see, that really high point that it had here is gone. So, and the whole thing has shrunk up this way. Ended up being like 22 millimeters. It just pulled itself in by pulling that out. So I had it just too vertical. So once I've found an undamaged area of the other one, I end up continuing from here before that transition into there, all the way around here is all one curve, where before it was steeper right through the middle and then flared out. And by having consistent curve and pulling all that out, and has really made it sit in there well. I'm pretty pleased with that. You can see how much less of this tyre is sticking out. I'll put the laser line and I'll see it used to be 160 millimeters from here back to there, and that's why I made that note after pulling the guard off exactly where the SRT. So don't forget, this has still got to sit in another 20 millimeters. That's just the wheel tyre sitting out that far because of the brake caliper being too big. This is only a 16-inch wheel, and you need a minimum of 18 just to clear these brakes. I'm hoping to run 18s all the way around rather than the 20s that are stock, but I'm unsure if I can clear that on the front 4-spot calipers, which I've got front and rear, but these are a smaller 4-spot than the fronts. So good progress. I'm happy. Yay! Now I've got to do it all over again on the other side. Don't know if to do that. Normally you do that straight away, but I like referencing back all the time. So we're just about ready to. I don't know if to temporarily mount this with some tabs and tech screws. But I'm going to take some measurements. I have a feeling that this curve here is the same one that the body takes. The body's got a reveal and then goes in a little bit. And so I'll have to see how far that ends up. This white line is where the body used to come out and go back in again on the Willys body compared to this guard. And with the new profile and everything, I should be disappearing just a little bit earlier. Rather than disappearing back into the guard here, I'll be disappearing about here. So, although don't forget this is including the bead where this is not, so it's probably the exact same spot that this is curving back in and then it'll go around. So everything from here back has to be cut off. You can see why I wanted to flatten that body profile out, because that's about the thickness of the bead that sits in the body. The body comes down and then there's a bead that follows all the way around the guard and then goes under through the doors and all the way to the cow and all the way to the grill. So by the time you add that thickness, I'll probably be going right through the body here in exactly the same spot that the Willys body did, and then tape it off, started cutting in through and then tapering off. So yeah, I'm really pleased with that. So you'll see it'll probably come up and come right around the back of this loop here somewhere. I'm hoping that a lot of that will stay. We'll wait and see. We'll wait and see. All right. Yay! I'm happy. First Willys panel in position. I won't say attached, but in position.